not necessarily local to Lille, but from the same country. So this will be the big event. We mentioned before how important it is to play well in your nearest regional, and we'll be trying to do so on stream now, as we got a little bit of a hint of what decks might be played right now. Piper playing the Zoroark variant and seen already some changes from the recent successful list. On the other side, Alexis seems to be playing some of those cards from the Mega Absol EX, Mega Kangaskhan EX deck.
Yeah, and Mega Absol, Mega Kangaskhan blowing out of the water from Milwaukee Regionals. And yeah, a thing we don't quite see often is Zoroark. But yeah, Piper opening up the game draw, attach, pass.
Well, both these decks have a little bit of a slower game plan. As we already see the pass back, another attachment from Piper into the INO, as energy is key for both sides. There is no acceleration that is easy to use. You know, you've got the Ends PP up and that Turbo Energize, both requiring trainer cards to allow them to do so. And now we will see Piper setting up with multiple Zoroark on board and a Buddy Buddy Puffin for that first deck search.
But unfortunate pieces of Buddy Buddy Puffin, whenever you're playing that Darmanitan, you're not going to be able to get out of Darumaka because it is exactly 80 HP. Here, being able to get something like the Cleffa, so you can be able to start drawing cards. But yeah, the whole thing about Zoroark, just like we saw with Zoroark EX, GX back in the day, you're able to use the trade ability, discard a card from your hand and draw two. Early game, you want to be using that Darmanitan if you can get it up and running, but you know, dishing out 170 with Reshiram and then be able to use its attack afterwards is just, you know, gonna get into it and getting better.
Zoroark able to trade resources away that you no longer need in exchange for two cards. A powerful effect, not just to draw cards, but to thin cards. And that Night Joker, copying any benched Ends Pokemon attack, will allow for plenty of options, especially as there is that End Mountain, as you mentioned. But the Cleffa was called by you, and it has come out and allowed for Piper to draw up to 7 cards. But with the INO last turn, Alexis now a fresh 6 cards and more to see what's possible, and that first deck search on his side.
And something I can see already popping out of the deck, that Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon being, you know, quite a good attacker in this matchup. Zoroark has an ability. You're going to be able to block that, which means that, you know, Piper has to be attacking in with it, either with something like, you know, the Okidogi that she's bringing for the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpons, which is a really good attacker heading into that, or simply straight by just using Darmanitan plus Monkey Dory to weave in some damage counters.
This is what's interesting with the current format, where you see both sides have options. And that's really exciting because it means that these stronger players who are aware of their options and calculating the opponent's options can find the right route to victory. You mentioned that Cornerstone, there is an answer on Piper's side. But another Zoroark that Alexis might play against that Cornerstone could be the success to victory. So as these players play out this best of 3, it'll be interesting to see how the game adapts and changes.
And one thing I don't think that Alexis is looking at, of course, Alexis is going to be looking at Cornerstone Mask Pokemon, pretty good into Zoroark. But then once Piper goes ahead and pops down that Okidogi EX, which is able to be one-hit knockouting the Cornerstone Mask Pokemon, then Alexis is going to have a task at hand, because you see that surprise factor that you could be bringing with the Zoroark decks and drawing that many cards, you'd be able to just, you know, slam that in there.
And the ace spec for Alexis here, the Precious Trolley, an amazing card, able to search your deck for as many basic Pokemon as you can fit on your bench and put them in play. Allows you to fully set up on that first turn. And one of the overlooked ace specs in the format, not as common as you might think considering how powerful it is, but in this deck it fits perfectly, as the strategy of Monkey Dories in combination with those mega attackers all over the field is so key.
And one thing that's very, very nice about playing this Mega Absol, Mega Kangaskhan deck is that you can be using Pekirond a lot with its subjugating change, being able to retreat. And when you're typically we'll be seeing Latias EX as that free retreat for all basic Pokemon, but with Yveltal in combination having that free retreat, you'll be able to use subjugating chains, get Yveltal into the active position, and then you literally just have free retreat and gain yourself a Latias.
And with that Turbo Energize, Alexis putting a Fighting Energy and a Dark Energy onto that Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon, going to be the main focus for the strategy in Game 1 here for Alexis. On the other side, Piper able to establish the Zoroarks and start drawing cards, thanks to that Cleffa previously, drawing up to 7. So this is the interesting thing about this matchup, Jesper, is both decks are known for taking it slow at the start and building up into those late game strategies, whether it is through revenge knockouts with the Zoroark using Ends Reshiram, or whether it is that disruptive strategy with Yveltal. So I think we're going to be seeing a slower start here, many turns of establishing a board back and forth from both players, and it will be interesting to see how they both navigate it.
Yeah, but here Hilda getting that extra Zoroark EX, being able to use trade once more. And yeah, Piper's, you know, happy about just sitting back a bit and going there, but the other day you see it, Okidogi EX coming in, and, you know, if we look at it, we got to get a face cam on Alexis there, getting into that, because, you know, Okidogi is such a threat, being able to, you know, basically one-hit knock out these Cornerstone Mask Ogerpons.
So that Poisonous Musculature, the first attack for 1 color, search your deck for up to 2 basic Dark Energy cards, attach them to this Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. And if you attach energy to a Pokemon this way, this Pokemon is now poisoned. So that's why you see that poison marker there on Piper's Okidogi EX. It has an astonishing 250 HP, but with it having to be poisoned, it does end up damaging itself. So the chain crazed attack for 130 plus 130 if it's poisoned will be the strategy going forward.
We do see the Absol getting in here, being able to do 200 damage, setting up that Okie Dokie for a knockout. And yeah, the target of Alexis here is just going to be get rid of it. We saw it, let's get rid of it to make sure that that Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon can get in later. Then you may be thinking, well, the Absol's going to be stuck in play anyway. Yes, but Alexis does play Penny to be able to help on that a bit later. So we have to start building up a good board for Alexis. This is a good start, using the Claw of Darkness, clawing away a card from Piper's hand, and we just have to see how Piper responds to this now.
I think there's a way that Piper can get the return knockout onto that Mega Absol. No Bravery Charm, no Lively Stadium. The Binding Mochi comes down, which adds 40 more damage to that attack. This will be doing 300 damage with that attack. 130 plus 130. Chain Craze will knock out. Mega Absol goes down. 3 prize cards for Piper. Our first knockout here in Lille.
And a mega knockout at that in the first Mega Evolutions tournament. And yeah, Alexis is just staring down the barrel of a crazy Okie Dokie EX. You know, right now, it does have 230 damage on it. Just a measly clutch is going to be able to knock that out. But it means that Alexis has to be using energy on that, which means that the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon is just going to take a little bit more time. And if Alexis is thinking, well, if we pass back and forth, the poison damage is going to do it. Well, I did see a Monkey Dory in Piper's hand being able to get around that. So the Monkey Dory, well, Alexis has to get rid of that now.
Crazy to think that a deck like Zoroark could just fit in this Okie Dokie so naturally as an answer for the Mega Absol EX, Gangscan EX deck. We mentioned in the pre-show how this has kind of been the deck out of nowhere for last event. You played it in Milwaukee, but it has got a huge target on its back at this event. And Alexis, despite going 3-0, is going to have to face many of these cards, like Piper has shown here, that are so strong into it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure whenever Alexis was preparing for this event, Zoroark was not on top of that bingo sheet. But here we are with it anyways. And, you know, the crazy thing about Zoroark is that you can be playing, you know, a lot of cornerstones in it. You can be playing, you know, Darmanitan, which actually has not been played a lot in Zoroark. Typically just been playing straight off the bat with those Reshurams. But yeah, being able to power up, getting down that Ens Reshuram, that Monkey Dory, and now being able to take out the Velta, going up by 4 prizes. And Cyrano as well, you know, look at how thin Piper's deck is.
Yeah, and that knockout from Alexis last time for 2 prize cards was quickly responded to by Piper. One of those players who's able to play incredibly quickly once the line has been established. And knowing this turn, an energy attachment, an Ens Reshuram going down, will allow for the return knockout on the Veltor, and that will leave Alexis with just 1 energy in play, and it is on that Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. And there is the knockout. Zoroark using Night Joker to copy the Ens Reshuram on the bench, and a Virtuous Flame, 170 damage to knock out the Yveltal.
Yeah, and that Virtuous Flame being able to set it up here because Alexis doesn't have any energy acceleration that could be happening on their turn, which means, yeah, we need to get that second Cornerstone Ogerpon down. But yeah, Piper being at 2 prizes, it opens up a line where if Alexis just attacks into a Zoroark, then the only thing Piper actually would need is a boss's orders to be able to use Powerful Rage and just take out, you know, that Pecaron on the bench. Or if Penny gets played, that Fessedipity. Or if we just see 2 more bosses from Piper, well, that's just going to be 2 Monkey Dories gone.
Exactly, and with the ability to trade away resources and draw cards, I'm sure we'll see the cards needed going straight into Piper's hand as soon as possible. And all 3 trade used in quick succession there. There is energy on board. Everything well established here. And this is game 1 here on the stream, and it's going by quite quickly. So at this stage, it's not just about the current result. It's about taking in information and learning what your opponent is playing. So Alexis will be establishing a game plan in his mind going forward, as this game is looking tough to come back from at this stage.
But we do get to see Piper using that Super Rock, getting back in Okie Dokie and 2 energies, setting up so if we're missing boss's orders, and if Alexis says no to attacking, then Alexis has to stare down that Okie Dokie once more. And with Alexis' current board and how it's going to look for the future, there's not a really good way to go ahead and just take out that Okie Dokie once it uses an attack.
There are a few options to take benched 1 prizes for Alexis. You know, you have the ability to gust them down. And with that counter gain, you don't need to have as many energy in play when you are behind like Alexis is right now. So establishing some options, and this is why this deck has been so good. There's lots of different lines, lots of different ways you can take it on. Mega Absol, Mega Kangaskhan have completely different angles and strategies. One is more for draw, one of them is more for that disruption, as well as that Ogerpon that we see in the active spot. A whole variety of ways to play the deck. And Alexis right now trying to establish which is the best line in this back foot position.
Yeah, and back foot position indeed here, Mike. Are we going to be looking at, you know, potentially just going Turbo Energize, hoping that, you know, targeting the Monkey Dories with it is going to be enough? I don't think so. It is going to be there. But yeah, Alexis just staring down the position of, you know, that Okie Dokie got too much out of it, right? It was doing too much to the board. And then we just end up looking at a position of Pecaron being able to take a lot of prizes potentially here. But it's pretty easy to knock out when you're looking at Zoroark. And Alexis is going to struggle because if you're able to do one-hit knockouts to Zoroark, that's nice. But if you aren't, that's where issues start to arise.
Interesting for those watching at home and checking out Piper's list as she discards her way through. That Psyduck appearing there with the damp ability to help against Duskmars. So a nice little inclusion there. And the Okie Dokie coming back down was recycled earlier on with the Super Rod, has been drawn back into. And at this stage, the boss's orders onto that Petron EX will be able to get it there into the active and able to swing into it with the Ends Zoroark Night Joker copying Virtuous Flame.
Yeah, and really smart from Piper here, just dealing the 170, because it basically just tells Alexis, one more boss's orders, and it's going to be gone. So I actually do really like, you know, picking up the Petron, because it means that Piper has successfully just said, you can't attack with this, otherwise you're just going to lose.
And with the double energy commitment to it now, if you penny that Petron EX up, it's going to allow all that energy you've accelerated into play to be removed. But it does give damage now for Alexis to move around with the Adrenabrain of the Monkey Dory. Tough position at this stage.
Yeah, the question is always going to come here, Mike. Where do you move the Adrenabrain damage to start building up these knockouts without it becoming, you know, too bad for yourself? Piper does have a Monkey Dory on their bench as well, so you can't be moving too much damage around, otherwise this is going to be thrown back in your face.
Exactly, and just a pass there. So it's all up to Piper now to try and find a route to victory. Palpad going to be putting that boss's orders back in, and the previous Professor Turo scenario, and we'll be looking to try and find a way back into the boss's orders at this stage to target that damaged Petron EX. We are one card away here from Piper taking game 1 on the stream.
Yeah, that doesn't look too great in terms of, you know, Palpad and doing the obvious. I'm going to pick back boss's orders and have 3 trades that are going to be able to draw 6 cards off your deck. Not guaranteeing the boss's order is going to come now, but virtually guaranteeing that it's going to come in the future.
Yeah, and there is more than one boss's orders in Piper's deck, but it is sitting in the prize card, so that will make it quite hard to find it. And there is another one that I think may be in the deck somewhere too, so quite a high likelihood now. But with 4 prize cards still take for Alexis, there's a lot of time available to fulfill this strategy.
So Professor Turo scenario is going to pick up that Monkey Dory, getting that reversal energy to Doki Doki, which covers now as a, you know, colorless type energy. And, you know, getting Oki Doki as the second attacker, being able to use potentially Piper's own Pekron EX once it comes to it, is just going to need an attachment and a Pekron. Subject gain change is going to give that poison, which means that, you know, Piper's going to be able to take out that cornerstone in the active position pretty easily next turn.
Choosing multiple lines for this end game, opening up many options. What lines have you seen, Alexis, that you can try and pull off at this stage? It is key with this archetype to always be on guard, because there's lots of different ways that the Mega Absol Kangaskhan deck can come back. It has disruption, it has acceleration through unusual means with that Turbo Energize and that counter gain and the energy switches, many different things that you've got to think about. And so I'm sure at this stage, Alexis will be wondering what that route could be, and just confirming what the Okidogi EX does, an unfamiliar card for many of us, as it doesn't feature in many decks.
No, it hasn't been featured in many decks, and whenever that came out, we tried to build decks with it, of course. That 260 Wild Poison, it looks pretty good, but one thing you have to consider as Alexis here, how do you hit into the Zoroark and not lose to the boss's orders next turn? Piper's going to be able to draw the rest of that deck with those free trades and a top deck, right? And then you're looking at it, okay, how do I then guard up against the Okidogi? But one thing that's really nice here to be found is that Enhanced Hammer is the first piece that it possibly be able to get back some.
I'm taking away an option there by removing that reversal energy and just trying things out at this stage. As we mentioned, there is still plenty of time in this Swiss round 4 here in Lille, and the Enhanced Hammer will remove that energy. But this is why it's so key to set up multiple routes to victory. You cannot pigeonhole down one route, because that's when things like disruption can punish you. That's where things like energy removal can, or a knockout, a key knockout. And it was Piper who had that key early knockout on the Mega Absol EX. And for Alexis, we'll just be passing straight back. And it's now on Piper. Can you find the boss's orders this turn with 3 trades and a very thin deck? Starting off with that Night Stretcher attachment,
fast energy switch.
And that's going to be a chance now. Petron EX into play, subjugating chain, that Okidogi EX into the active, and the knockout on the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon.
And one thing I really have to give to Piper is that it's great. You see this 3-4 turns ago. Piper sees the line, Okidogi EX, let's just take some prices with it. And, you know, Piper just going so elegantly fast, because Piper knows we're playing 50 minutes +1, not +3 anymore. And we need these games to finish fast, one way or the other.
And the first knockout was thanks to that Okidogi EX, poisoning itself after accelerating 2 energy. And the Binding Mochi in combination with its attack, doing 300 damage with Chain Crazed into the Mega Absol EX, which is enough to knock it out. And it was a powerful knockout at that. 3 prize cards for Piper. Alexis did return the knockout with Yveltal, and it was the establishment of the boards on both sides that favored the deck that draws more cards.
Yeah, and drawing more cards gives you more power to be able to finish off these games. That Palpad at the end of the game was just telling Alexis, at some point, there's going to come a boss orders, and at some point, it means you're going to lose. In this case, it wasn't even a boss's order, so it's just the energy switch coming from Piper, having all these energies in play by the usage of Ends PP up, for example, and just, you know, continuing to reel in these things. And yeah, then again, Petron giving that poison to the Okidogi, being able to deal 260, and yeah, Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon is not going to stand up against that.
Yeah, if you're going to go down the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon route, you've got to hope there's not an answer. And as soon as that Okidogi EX comes out, now Alexis is going to be thinking game 2, well, that's not an option now. Got to think of a different route to victory, as a lot of information has been shared in game 1 by both players. All those interesting cards featuring in both decks. A lot of similarities between Ends Zoroark and the Mega Absol EX deck. Both of them willing to take it slow and establish that board. Talk to me about how important it is to have these archetypes in the format that are willing to take it slower and return from behind.
It means when you're seeing these kinds of decks that are taking it slower, Zoroark having 280 HP is still such a cliff to get over when it comes to the point, right? And whenever Zoroark's taking damage, that powerful rage of the Ends Reshiram is just going to be able to dish all that back. So it means that as the attacking deck into Zoroark, you have to be dealing this damage either very early to take out Zoroark, thereby taking out the setup. And speaking of setups, you know, not too bad at pricing here.
Yeah, and on the other side, Mega Absol EX almost has a similar strategy of if you swing into it, damage can be moved back with Monkey Dory, and then it can knock you out for one hit. So both of them willing to sustain damage in those early stages. So it does create a very interesting matchup for you guys at home to watch, as it seems Alexis having the perfect turn 2 here. As long as there's an energy in hand, has that Precious Trolley in combination with a Turbo Energize, which might be in the hand here. That's the Precious Trolley there. We'll be able to search all the Pokemon out. Just got to work out which tool to get off of Arven at this stage.
Yeah, and getting that, you know, Turbo Energized, it doesn't even need it. I saw that there was an energy and a Turbo Energized already in hand, meaning that you get the luxury to pick up that Bravery Charm. Going Precious Trolley, already digging out so many cards in your deck. You're able to dig out, you know, 9 cards of your deck with that. Arven picking 2, Precious Trolley picking 5, that's 7. Turbo Energized picking out 9 cards. You know, the thinner your deck is, the better you're going to draw.
And with these decks that are willing to start slow and build up, how important is it to have a strong early setup to the game plan that you're planning to do?
It's always going to be super important just to outline, this is what I want to be doing with this game. And we have to think about it on Alexis' side. Alexis did the trial and error thing here. Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon game 1. Did that work out? Not really. What do we then do? Is it going Mega Kangaskhan? Potentially, because that can actually one-hit knock out these Zoroarks. Although this does require you to flip heads twice, but we'll leave that out of the equation there. Or do you go aggressive Zoroark to get rid of some of these pieces, right? It's a good question because it always would end up be playing into that powerful rage.
Yeah, exactly. Swinging into End Zoroark is always scary, but there's often targets around the Zoroarks themselves that you can go for. You can see a Yveltal on the board right now, often Monkey Dories, as well as the Pheasantipity and Petron EX in the later game. But the Mega Kangaskhan EX appearing this time for Alexis, it wasn't there in game 1, but a 3-prize Pokemon that allows you to draw and tank some hits. A fascinating inclusion for the archetype, and one that we'll see in full effect right now.
Yeah, we're going to be seeing that in full effect, being able to use the Petron, subjugating chains potentially. And no, forgoing that, going to go ahead and do the Turbo Energize just straight from that. Typically, you could also be doing that from the Kangaskhan, but if you want to be charging up the Kangaskhan, it has to stay in the bench.
Very true, and that attack from Kangaskhan creating some highlight moments in Milwaukee. Rapid fire combo, 200 plus 50 for each heads you flip in a row. If you get tails, the damage stops there. So sometimes you need to get that high roll on the 250, 300 damage, sometimes even higher, 350. And we saw a fascinating moment with Mew EX genome hacking rapid fire combo to knock out a Mega Kangaskhan EX. But it really is that run errand, the ability that people use it for, as the drawing of 2 cards is so key. And we see exactly that happening on Piper's side with Trey, discarding those unnecessary Buddy Buddy Poffins now, allowing her to draw 2 more cards. There were some cards we didn't get to see from Piper in game 1 that might become relevant in this one.
Yeah, we're mentioning the Darumaka Domanitan, not quite the matchup that we're going to be able to see that in, but more effects of usage of Monkey Dory. Team Rocket's Watchtower being able to close down Mega Kangaskhan's draw is going to be pretty effective when we're talking about Iono later, being able to shut that down. Typically, that's added for, you know, these knocked out decks, but, you know, you can have a 2-in-1 when it comes to that.
Especially with it now sitting in the active and attacking, that's going to be a key piece here, as the first knockout will not require any heads from their rapid fire combo. Just 200 damage will be enough, but it looks like attempting to try and take the knockout here early on, see if we can get it. Alexis will have just checked. We can't quite see whether that was a heads. We'll just be checking to see what the outcome is there. And it looks like
flipping. Tails.
Just 250, maybe 200 damage we get to see at this stage. And it's an exciting moment every time we see the Mega Kangaskhan attack. Just 200 damage there for Alexis.
Yeah, but what Piper's going to be able to do here is going to be trade. It just needs an energy and a Reshiram, and then its knockouts is going to be dished back into that Mega Kangaskhan, and Piper going to be able to open up with those free prizes.
Sometimes early aggression into End Zoroark allows you to catch them slacking, as they aren't able to get the energy in play and the End Reshiram required. And
we do see an energy. Do we see the End Reshiram? That's all the pieces that we need right here, Mike, but I don't quite see. I see Cyrano, but that only gets you EX Pokemon, not, you know, these normal Pokemon like Reshiram is. And my God, like we do see the Pekkaron, the Pheasantipity, but Pheasantipity is not going to be able to draw cards because we haven't suffered any knockouts on Piper's side. So the way that it's looking now is that, you know, Alexis is going to be able to, you know, breathe at the very least. And Piper potentially just want to be like, okay, I'm going to shove another Pokemon into the active spot and take a hit with that. Hope that Alexis is not going to be able to boss his orders with that Zoroark, because that Zoroark, you know, even though becoming like sort of a damage bank at the bench, right? But being able to just say, I'm going to have a one-hit knockout just waiting for some point.
Now we see the Yveltal coming into the active at this stage, poising itself through the subjugating chain and the energy attachment across to another Pokemon. Something End Zoroark is very comfortable having is damage Pokemon in play. And so if you can survive a few turns there, you will be able to get that big knockout in the future with a powerful rage. Now it's up to Alexis. Alexis in a much stronger position here in game 2.
Yeah, much stronger position, even though like it had been quite the reverse if Piper had hit the Ensresher there. But starting to charge up that Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon and just going through with it with the Mega Kangaskhan. We can still draw cards with Run Errand, which in that case, you know, stuff like Pokegear, Boss's Orders are cards that we want to target you to be able to take off that threat of that damaged Zoroark on the bench.
And Absol here has the free retreat, something that is often overlooked by many players. Why is it so important to have these free retreating Pokemon in your deck?
Whenever you're starting your turn off, as we gave the example of, you know, being able to use... Oh, we do see Boss's Orders, but on the Pekaron instead of the Zoroark there, Mike.
Yeah, big knockout at this stage, and that free retreat are going straight into the active, as mentioned, allowing you to pivot around.
I do actually really like the play here because we attached to the Cornerstone Ogerpon there the turn previously. And whenever we're doing that, it means that if the Zoroark goes up and does the one-hit KO on the Mega Kangaskhan, a Fighting Energy could be able to just make it so the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon is going to be able to take the knockout on Zoroark, and whoop-de-doo, Alexis will be down on 2 prizes.
And all the while, that Mega Kangaskhan EX is in the active. Run Errand will be available to draw more cards. Simple turns for Alexis at this stage, but it is about finding the right resource at the right time, as the continuous rapid-fire combo of 200 damage, sometimes more, into Piper's side will allow Alexis to be in a strong position. But that secret box, one of the most powerful ace-specs in the game right now.
Yeah, and being able to get that Artisan. You know what Artisan gives you? It gives you Ensresher. And what does Ensresher give you? It gives you a way to knock out this Mega Kangaskhan. But that's pretty short-sighted when we look at it that way. Because yes, as said, Alexis only needs a fighting-type energy to be able to take out that Zoroark if that's the way that Piper decides to go. And when we're looking at it that way, then we have to think about, what do we do then? Piper can get an Okidogi just attacking in 1 turn. Piper would be going down to 3 prizes. And then we have to look at how does Piper take the rest of her prize cards?
So it's looking pretty even here for both players. Piper pal-padding back in the Professor Tyros scenario, which was key last game to pick up Monkey Doria liability on board. That is the main use case for Zoroark, typically, is picking up a liability. But on this occasion, Zoroark does have damage on it. You don't want to pick it up as it's so powerful now, using that powerful rage, 20 times the amount of damage on it. Reshiram, the key attacker that Zoroark will copy. There is that Star Manitan for Piper, but this is not the matchup. It's for just trying to find those big knockouts. And it looks like an Iono there from Piper will disrupt Alexis, especially after drawing all those cards with Mega Kangaskhan.
Yeah, and drawing all those cards with Mega Kangaskhan, we're going to be able to see the retreat into the Zoroark, knocking out the Mega Kangaskhan, and we get to see exactly, you know, how it's going to unfold. Does Alexis have the fighting energy? Does, you know, I don't quite see it yet. There's a
Lily's determination.
That's going to give you 6 cards, but, you know, Mike, is 6 cards going to be enough? I'd rather one Larvin here.
I mean, that's the challenge with a deck that doesn't have draw on board. Zoroark so consistent with its trade. For Alexis, after a disruption, only seeing 4 cards, now going to see 6 with that Lily's determination. You do have things like the Pheasantipity EX to try and help out, but it's going to be a tough one here if that fighting energy, which there are not many of in the deck, eludes him.
Yeah, and, you know, it's just a typical...
Just one.
Yeah, and how many vessels do we have to see from Alexis as well? Because that's another way of doing it.
Just 2 vessels.
It's a 3 outs of hitting a fighting energy, and the deck's still quite large. So do we see that? No fighting energy, no earthen vessel, Mike. Yeah, this doesn't look too good because this Zoroark, with just a boss on top, we can take out the Pekaron, and then suddenly Piper's down to 1 prize. What Alexis really needed this turn was to be able to take out this Zoroark, because this Zoroark initially just deals so much damage.
And now we see those trades coming through. An extra 6 cards every turn. Also thinning out those bad ones. Boss's Orders would be key. There are 3 in Piper's deck, not been used at this stage. And so we'll be looking to try and take down that benched liability, whether it's Petrant, whether it's Monkey Dory. Still only needs to take 2 knockouts at this stage, and that's going to be the Okidogi. So maybe even setting up for multiple routes at this stage. So many options for Piper in this late game of Game 2.
It is always so smart for Piper just to go ahead and be like, well, if I can't do this, let me just set up for this other thing that I can do. Because whenever a Cornerstone Ogerpon then attacks next turn, then if Piper can set it up to be an energy switch knockout potentially, we're seeing the energy switch now down to Okidogi, being able to attach to Okidogi, pretty much telegraphing that next turn. Oh,
Turo as well, and that's going to take all that damage out of play. And now Piper will be able to set up the Okidogi EX. That first attack, we saw it last game, Poisonous Musculature, allowing to search for 2 basic energy, and it poisons you, so you do not need the subjugating chain of Petrant EX on this occasion. Ready to swing into the Cornerstone next turn.
And we just get to see what happens whenever, you know, you lose that tempo. But Blood Moon Ursaluna getting down here. Piper has 3 prizes remaining. Blood Moon Ursaluna with 2 energies is going to be able to take out this Okidogi. The hard work. And then Zoroark, because the Turo was played, not going to be able to one-hit knock out that Blood Moon Ursaluna. And with Alexis playing, you know, Penny in the deck, being able to pick that back up and go into Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon and just draw out a bit more time.
Yeah, that's a great inclusion here at this stage. Blood Moon Ursaluna's Blood Moon attack. 240 damage is so powerful. It's the highest guaranteed damage output in Alexis's deck until the late stages where you've got Petron EX, whether it's the Kangaskhan hitting higher numbers, but 240 in the current format is such a good number to be able to take out many targets. It was not designed for Okidogi EX, as we do not see that very often, but it is the perfect number.
Yeah, it's a perfect number in this case. Okidogi having 250 HP. That poison that, you know, Piper put onto themselves was giving 10 damage, and then it just fits perfectly with that Blood Moon getting in there. You know, I mean, sometimes we see things that we don't quite accounted for, but they will end up going into fruition anyway. But for this Blood Moon to work out, yes, we're subjugating James into Veltal, retreating into Blood Moon or Saluna, playing Energy Switch, attaching to our Saluna, which pretty much means that Alexis then on the next turn is not going to be able to, A, attack. Well, he is going to be because of the Petron being able to just pull back and forth, but not going to be able to attack with Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon.
Interesting, not able to get the Blood Moon Saluna attack off this turn. Instead going to be setting up in a future turn using the second Turbo Energize here. That singular fighting energy and a dark energy coming out. One on to the Blood Moon Saluna and the fighting going on to the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. Yveltal, the one prize Pokemon in the active. And it is important to note that Piper only needs to take 3 prize cards. So a 1 prize and a 2 prize would do it at this stage. But it is so important that a big knockout is possible. And that is only possible with this Okidogi X at this stage. So boss's orders to take out Blood Moon would be key. And we'll just watch Piper go through these final stages. Not many cards left in deck. It's going to be key.
You know, and one thing I'm looking at is how Piper is going to be able to take out their prize cards, right? Yveltal for 1, and then the boss's orders at any stage onto that Petcaron with Petcaron of her own dealing that poison damage, being able to take up a poisonous Mochi.
And that Team Rocket's Watchtower, we mentioned about how it can shut down the Mega Kangaskhan EX, but it also shuts down the season skill of the Blood Moon Ursaluna. But it will be that boss's orders onto the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. With the stadium in play, asking so many questions, Piper needs Alexis to do a lot more next turn in order to disrupt that board, as it's so stable at this stage. And it looks like now it's swung straight back into Piper's favor as this huge knockout with the boss's orders onto the Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon. 1 prize card for Piper. What can you do at this stage, Alexis?
Not to try to be pessimistic here, Mike, but it's not looking like there is the Blood Moon or Saluna being able to take the knockout here, but Piper, all she needs right here is another boss's orders. Quite the wrong one when we're comparing it to you, Mike, but look at it here. A boss's orders is a boss's orders, regardless of Giovanni or not, and that's going to be able to take the game on Piper's side next turn. And Alexis not going to be able to do much about that with 3 trades just hanging around the bench.
Even disruption at this stage feels impossible, and Lily's determination is going to make that, quite frankly, impossible, as Iono was the only way to do so. At this stage, it's looking really tough for Alexis. Despite seeing 6 cards off that Lily's determination, a huge card included in the Mega Set to open up a lot of these archetypes. We see many in Alexis's deck, whether it's the Yveltal, the Lilies, or the 2 main attackers in Mega Absol and Mega Kangaskhan, but a lot needs to be done. 4 prize cards for Alexis. This was a tough matchup for Zoroark at the previous tournament. It looked massively in favor of the Mega Absol deck, but Piper's Okidogi EX has shown exactly how to counter one of your toughest matchups.
And it's just the Okidogi EX being thrown in there. Constantly, Zoroark was having issues with these Cornerstone Mask Ogerpots, but no more with that Okidogi EX. Such, you know, ingenuity coming from Piper, being able to say, what if I just toss this 1 card into my deck? And you see what it does now? It's basically just swung this matchup from a bad one to something that looks very, very good for Piper.
Incredibly favorable, an amazing inclusion, and it will be incredibly tough for Alexis to find a route to victory. Does have the energy switch, so can move that onto the Petron EX and take a knockout at this stage, as the Petron EX's attack will be doing 300 damage at this stage. Irritated Outburst for the knockout, and it's now for Piper to try and work out how to do it. We'll be using the Night Stretcher. Petron EX moves the Zoroark into the active and takes the knockout here, and Piper will be winning our first stream game here in Lille. Round 4 goes to 4-0.
And Piper Lipine coming all the way over from North America, showing us Zoroark and why that is going to be, you know, Mega Absol, Mega Kangaskhan. One of the next we were looking at this tournament and being like, this is a new deck that people have to beat. But yeah, as we look at it, it looked like a domination attempt here from Piper. At some stages, it did look quite, you know, dicey when it came to it. But at the end of everything, it looked like something, you know, Piper was in control of all the way. And this is the Okidogi we were talking about.
Exactly. The poisonous musculature, accelerating energy, and allowing for those 3 dark energy for the next turn with the Chain Crazed in combination with Binding Mochi is enough to knock out that Mega Absol EX as we see it there. That was the swinging point in game 1 for Piper.
Yeah, and Piper going into the game 2. Alex is kind of having a different way of looking at it, but we do see the end of game 1 here, knocking out Yveltal, then boss's orders onto the Petron, and then Alexis going into game 2 thinking, I need to do something else here, right?
This is the downside of the Mega Pokemon, giving up 3 prize cards. If one is knocked out, it gives your opponent so much time as they're able to take smaller knockouts to finish off the game. But every single time we saw Piper planning out an endgame strategy, there was always multiple routes, and we were always waiting to see which was the option taken. In game 1, it was Okidogi EX taking a late game knockout after that early game swing. Game 2, Piper took it a little bit slower as it looked like Alexis was streaming ahead.
Yeah, and Alexis was very close to being able to knocking out that Zoroark that was going to be the biggest threat of the game. A Zoroark with 200 damage count is not something that's very nice. And we do see it here with the Reshiram. Powerful Rage, 1-hit knockouting that Kangaskhan. And that was where the game turned. You know, Alexis missing that boss's orders. The Turo healing up the Zoroark after Alexis then on the other turn missed the fighting energy. And yeah, Okidogi powering up itself is a poisonous musculature.
And in both occasions, Alexis had the opportunity for a few card combination to take a big knockout, but with the small hand sizes and the lack of draw in play, it was really hard for the deck to find those solutions, and it was often having to be done across 2 turns. We saw that exact thing happen there, needing to use Turbo Energize to accelerate the energy, and that just gave the time for Piper to get ahead. With 1 prize card remaining, it was just the Night Stretcher required as the final piece.
Yeah, and something that both games had in common, it was always subjugating chains into a Pokemon